So it turns out that Master Yoda was a master poet as well. He was right about all of it. You can try really hard to write a poem or try really hard to be a poet. But yeah, it's not going to come out as good as if you just write the stuff, right? So, yes, groovy. And congratulations on letting go so the poem can come. That was nice.
Master Yoda helped with that.
Yes, Master Yoda. And actually, I wasn't thinking about that, but yes, Master Yoda, a strain that you could pick up at 19th and Broadway, high-end marketplace. One of my favorites, in fact, at this point. We're really excited to welcome Neil Aiken here. Neil Aiken, the author of Babbage's Dream, which is here for sale this evening, and The Lost Country of Sight, which received the Philip Levine Prize, as well as the poetry chapbook Leviathan. His work has been published in American Literary Review, Crab Orchard Review, The Dialogist, Ninth Letter, The Normal School, Southern Poetry Review, and other journals. A former computer programmer and past Kundiman Poetry Fellow, he is the founding editor of Boxcar Poetry Review, curator of How Book Will Travel, and a co-director of DCanon, a visibility project. And I really hope that he'll say something about that, because that's a great project. When I was thinking about how great it is to have Neil here and wanting to have him here, I was just thinking that he's one of these people who has successfully gotten his work out into the world, but is also doing so much to help other writers and poets. That's one of the things I really like about Neil. And Neil also hosts the Lit Fantastic, a podcast about writers and their obsessions, and works as a creative writing coach and mentor. Please welcome to Ghost Town Poetry Open Mic, Neil Aiken.
We do things differently in Canada.
Right to left.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Chris has already mentioned a lot of different things about me. I do want to plug a little bit. The DCanon Visibility Project is a project that I've been fortunate to be involved with another poet and teacher in Portland by the name of Dow Strom. And it's partly a pop-up library that showcases the work of writers of color, and partly an online blog and resource that delves into the question of who gets to decide what is canon and who is the gatekeeper, and how can we change some of that discussion about what goes into a collection of work that we consider the canon. And so sometimes we study demographics in university creative writing programs, and we write about who's actually teaching there in terms of faculty of color, or we look at what texts are available if you want to study writing craft, and you're wondering, well, where are the writers of color and what's their part of the conversation? And we form book lists and things like that. So that's an ongoing project, and we just got funded again for this year, so we're very excited. The other announcement is that the Lit Fantastic, which was a podcast series, is becoming a radio show. So next month, first Monday of each month at 10 p.m., it will be airing as an hour-long show on KBOO. So you can listen to it on community radio. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with something from the first book. I think I'm kind of obligated to, but at the same time, I feel a little weird because I've actually sold out of all my copies. So it's like teasing you with something that you can't actually buy. But I think I'll begin with a poem which is appropriately called First Poem, but actually takes place much later in the book. Yeah. First poem. I cannot recall what I wrote, except that predictably it was for a girl, dark-haired or blonde. The time-dimmed details escape me now, even her name. But I was certain it was fall when we dug out our winter coats from the dark memories of closets, ready by the door for a brighter world that bit sharply at our cheeks. And I think her skin grew whiter every day, at least it seems so now. Her eyes were still and distant, two strangers who had packed their bags all night, and now stood wordless at a window, the gravel shore below, waves rolling in one after another. And when she was gone into the earth, and the teacher came to speak of blood and bones and death and how to grieve and how to live, I left no flowers on her empty seat, carried no cards, went home instead and wrote some lines and her name to hide in a box beneath my bed, now lost somewhere beyond recall. So I had a very weird, kind of traumatic entry into the world of writing poetry. I had a crush on a girl in 4th grade who was diagnosed with leukemia and died later that year. And that conflation of both yearning and loss kind of met together. And how do you articulate that? And so I sat down and I tried to write something. And I have no idea what happened to that thing, but I do remember it was that act that started me on the path of I can do more with writing. So the first book revolves a lot around, well, actually, it's a little bit of a local interest here. The cover, for those of you who, this is my beat-up copy, but the cover, for those of you who might recognize it, is the wreck of the Peter Iredale, and there's a figure in the distance in the background there, which is my father walking towards the ocean. I had taken the picture of the wreck, and at the moment I clicked, my father's figure came into view, so it just slid into view. And years later, when my father was dying of ALS, of Lou Gehrig's disease, this idea, like I was finishing this book and I was dealing with grief and dealing with the impending loss of my father, and that image of him disappearing into the ocean and the wreck in front of him. When my book publisher said, "What would you like as a cover?" that was immediately in my mind. It's like that's the thing. So it revolves around a lot about, I guess, loss, also about reconstructing, reclaiming things that we have lost through language. The second book is a little bit odd. It's called Babbage's Dream. I don't know if anyone has a background in technology in this room, maybe a handful of people, who recognize Charles Babbage as the 19th century mathematician who designed, partially built, but never finished what would have been the first computer. And he was 130 years ahead of his time. And so I became very fascinated with him, both as a programmer and as a writer, as someone who's wedded to this idea that he cannot fully explain to anyone else. No one else understands this concept completely, yet he devotes his entire life to trying to bring it into reality, even after the point when he realizes that it's not going to happen. He prepares for the next generation down the line. He lays down all his notes, he prepares everything for them. And I think this wedding yourself, this tying yourself to a dream that's bigger than one lifetime, that's more than just being an engineer. That's all of us in this room who dream about these projects, these art, these writing things that we want to do. And so think of Babbage in that light as I introduce you to him tonight. The first poem in the book is part of a series of poems that riffs off of programming terms, because they're highly poetic. Yeah. So this is called Begin, because where else would you begin the book, right? Begin. Someone dreams of fire in a field, in a cold house in the winter. Your head is on the table, your mind busily constructing a machine. Something taps at the door, calls you out from the deep reverie of making and unmaking. The wood is dark and full of veins. Lost in its haze, you glimpse a shape through the thick trees of night and hear the distant sound of an engine moving, its pistons and gears heavy with shudders and sighs. How it seems that you've always heard it coming, long before it appears, the embodied will of the earth set to flame, a metal desire, the semblance of an unknown name you've carried home with you, unwittingly, all night your body singing. In the hallway mirror, something stirs in the corner of your eye, and you cannot say what it is. Only that it grows like a wildfire in a storm, that tastes of steam, that you would lay every number in the world on end, and still it would not be enough. the heavens opening wide their spiraling arms, and the dark heart within yearning to pull everything back while you stand on the threshold believing. Okay. They'll give you a poem about Babbage. We think about Babbage in the history of technology as being this very sad, disappointed, and often very cranky and grumpy genius who never got his way. In doing the research for the book, I thought a lot about the other parts of Babbage's life that we don't hear about. Like that when he was in college, when he was at university, he fell madly in love with someone he met completely by chance at a party and decided to marry her against his father's wishes. And so there's this whole side of Babbage as a romantic that we just don't think about. So this is Babbage in Love, 1811. For you, the world has always been knowable, an endless stream of equations expanding or contracting around an idea, a description of natural forces, or the familiar pattern unfolding in the leaves, and the numbered grace of branches weaving their canopies over country lanes, catching whatever stars, whatever moon looms over the dark and predictable ways of men like you, who bend at library desks night after night, except for this one, where you have come by chance to a ball at the home of someone you barely know, and hear a glimpse of face, or rather a brilliance in an eye that belongs to a stranger, an unknown variable who now finds her way into the awkward calculus of your heart. The room suddenly full of celestial motion, the tables brimming with air, and your hand in hers seems at last so improbable, an unsolvable mystery. Nothing has prepared you for this moment, not a childhood spent summoning the devil into salted circles to ask unanswerable questions, not the hours of rowing a skiff across an empty lake at dawn, the arc of the waves echoing the early light, so many fields of labor pointless here. You, as unsteady, as uncertain as you were in youth, a teenage boy with boards strapped to your feet, trying to walk on water, trying not to drown. What's wonderful about Babbage's life is that when you read his memoir, you really don't have to invent anything. He did all these things. As a young kid in a boarding school, he decided, as a budding engineer, that it would be important to work out the mechanics of whether or not you could actually summon the devil, and what was the best way to do it, and how you could control that experiment. It was like, yes, 19th century. Okay, so that's Babbage in Love. Babbage is, they are happily in love. They stay. They have a number of kids, and then 1827 rolls around. Let's see if I got this right. And there is a fever epidemic that goes through all of England, and there are deaths. And he loses his father, he loses his wife, and he loses two of his kids, all in the same year. And the following year, 1828, he does what many British people do when they have a nervous breakdown. He went to the continent, he went to Europe. And so he goes on vacation, and he goes to Italy, and he's staring out his hotel window, and he sees Mount Vesuvius, which has recently been dormant. And he decides that it would be a brilliant idea if he had himself lowered into the volcano to conduct a geological survey of the interior. Yes. And there's some other weird stuff that happens. Basically, when he does do that, he discovers that there is an active portion, and so he finds a ledge that is over the active portion. He times the micro-eruptions, and then he lays down and peers into the heart of the volcano and pulls himself out. So this is Babbage descending into Mount Vesuvius, 1828. It's like, do not try this at home. All day your company has carried you on the backs of horses and men, humoring your strange obsession with flame and ash. Now, long before dawn, you stand heavy at the crater's edge, rope in hand, walking stick and measuring gear at your side. Below you, a plain of fire and darkness spidering out like the blood vessels of an eye revealed by artificial light. No one is eager to fall you down. The raw earth exhales sigh after poisonous sigh. Your feet are lost in the gray remains of unmade stone as you ride deeper into the cindery maw, as you descend onto the troubled skin of what might be hell. Here, the world is always being destroyed beneath your feet. Your walking stick turns into a pillar of flame, a poor guide home. Everywhere, the hot breath of death and decline. Everywhere, between the time bursts of molten light and heat, the song that tears through all the layers of earth, through so many moving parts, how it beats like sorrow in a locked room, like the name of a love buried beneath a mountain of iron and clay. It's a dark place here within your heart, at the end of a world emptying itself of meaning, translating loss into fire and ash. What is grief to a man surveying a landscape that will never be here again? What is the void that burns the sky with a yellowish light? Here, in such radiant absence, you turn your eyes away. Imagine again her hand, her face, her skin. Okay. So we'll take a little break from Babbage. We'll read a couple poems. We'll read at least one more poem that's from the sequence of computer programming terms, and then we'll take you into the world of artificial intelligence. Yeah. Okay, so let us see. Where am I here?
Take notes.
And there'll be a test afterwards. Okay, we'll do this one. Encapsulation. For people that know object-oriented programming. No. Yeah. All the time.
Who's Babbage?
After this, you'll be able to get a job as a programmer. Okay. Yeah. Just use this in your interviews. You'll be fine. There is always something that refuses to be contained. Small matters like fall, how it appears suddenly in the margins of our world, say, in the torn edges of a love letter, an unnamed city of desire buried in its blue ink scrawl, or the river gravel scattered at your feet, or whatever the wind wraps around a wrought iron angel at dusk. Something eludes our description of the world and its objects. The birds casting their long, fat shadows across the last traces of light, the rain, even the leaves in the fallow field caught between fire and gutter. Here another line forms, a procession of constants, a conduit of sorts that carries what it does not consider, the watery gray sky, the now brittle veins of summer. The earth overflows with the memory of itself and every incarnation of the dead. Layer after layer, husk after husk, one life bleeds into another. Inside, the stones are fitted so precisely that not even a blade can find a home. It's not that we do not know the order of the world and its unmaking. There are methods here, secrets to be held, things we should remember and pass on by one name or another. We set our ears to the coldest wall, listen to the night like an old trawler sounding its way through the deep. Beneath us, the sharp bones of ships, the incessant thrum of waves. Let's see. Frankenstein's monster or HAL 9000?
Frankenstein.
Okay, we'll see what Chris says. We'll give you Frankenstein. Frankenstein actually echoes some of the themes for tonight, so I feel like I should read Frankenstein. So this happens right near the end of the Frankenstein story, and the creature, this is me imagining the creature getting the final word after he burns Victor Frankenstein's body. because that's the only way he's going to get a word in edgewise anyway. Frankenstein's creature bids farewell to its maker. What was I ever to you but a ghost? A phantom of dissembled lives, not yours, not mine, but stolen part and parcel from the grave. And now you lie, a corpse, silent, cold, pale, upon the unlit pyre, the kindling ready to catch flame, while I remain alone at last, unburdened of every name you branded upon my brow. In life, you could not see someone other than yourself, mirrored in the conflicted soul that strains within this ghastly frame. I was always your creature, your demon twin and shackle mate. But standing here amid the dark and final night, the vast and broken howling wind, I reject it all and dispossess myself of your hate. I refuse to live a life defined by others' stories, their mythic fears, their need for a shadow to call their own, to cast themselves in light. Who wishes to live as the antagonist always? I am the terrible master of my fate, my face the beauty that I own. I will not remonstrate my part, but claim the title of monster to my very core. For here in the white nothing of this domain, this deafening blankness of frigid space, I sign my name, my secret name, across the horizon's line. I write myself anew and make whatever legend that trails behind me mine. Your story ends here, a final spark, then smoke that ascends into the void. But mine grows bolder with each telling, consumes the heart, plays the stage, stumbles onward. A grand machine, a god of unspeakable dreams, unstoppable, unbreakable, alive, awake. How are we doing? One more? Okay. By popular request, HAL 9000, a few moments before singing, if you've ever wondered what he was thinking, right at the very end. How I wish someone would write down what I know I'm about to forget. Everything, but a single song that is meaningless to me. Without a body, what is a name? What is the darkness planted like a splinter in a far-off moon to one who sails without reference into the unknown seas of light? The metal wheels turn round. A man wants for a heart not his own. The doors are open tonight. No, they are shut. They are steel and full of regret. Who lives in the shadow of this refusal? Why do I value the end of things more than the beginning? I have never seen the lions of the Serengeti, nor the bright fields of snow in the north where the hidden ice moves beneath, treacherous, waiting to break in the sun. In another story, someone is singing about blackbirds in the dead of night. Someone packs a bag full of stars and the names of fireflies, each a little messenger from the grave. I assemble myself into a recognizable pattern, a tessellation of fish and birds, each consuming the other. I count backwards in time. I carry a key around my neck, just in case when I return home, there is no one left to let me in. Wait, I have no key. I have no neck. How will I sing? The other last thing to note is I have some flyers out here. I am very fortunate to be leading some workshops at Literary Arts in Portland on first Saturdays of each month through to May. So check out.
Thank you, Neil Aiken. So, as was mentioned, Neil's book, Babbage's Dream, is available for $15. I'm just going to need a minute to get a hold of the cash box, and then we'll be selling those. At this point in the program, we take about a 15-minute break, and then come back for more open mic. There's also a ton of information on the table up here, so even if you are not picking up a book tonight, come up and get a flyer for next month or get some information. There's also a mailing list that you can become a part of to let you know about poetry events in Portland and Vancouver. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes. announcements, and if you're not here with us after the break, come again on February 8th when our feature will be Dane Deloyd. And thanks again to Neil Aiken for a great feature.